The pre-dawn air carries whispers of ancient routes, and tonight, like my grandfather before me and his grandfather before him, I prepare for the crossing. My name is Amara, and I am a salt merchant of the Tuareg people. For 30 seasons I have walked these endless golden seas, leading caravans across the great emptiness that separates the salt mines of Taghaza from the gold markets of Timbuktu. Tonight, as the stars will overhead in their eternal dance, I will tell you of one particular journey, one that changed not just my understanding of trade, but of life itself. The darkness before dawn is different in the desert. It breathes with anticipation, heavy with the scent of cooling sand and the distant promise of morning winds. Around me, the caravan stirs like a great beast awakening. 300 camels, their bells muffled for now, stand in patient lines. Their breath creates small clouds in the crisp air, and their eyes reflect the dying embers of our fires. These are not ordinary animals, but the ships of the desert, each one carefully selected for this grueling journey. Their broad feet are nature's gift to the sandwalker, and their ability to survive on little water makes them more precious than gold itself. The preparation began 3 days ago when the last of the salt blocks were loaded. Each camel carries approximately 150 kilograms of white gold, the crystalline treasure that makes our journey worthwhile. The salt comes from the ancient mines of Taghaza, where men work in conditions that would break lesser spirits. I have seen these mines, carved deep into the earth like wounds in the desert's flesh. The salt is not merely harvested but prayed over, blessed by the old ways that my people have practiced since time immemorial. My lead camel, Aziza, shifts restlessly beside me. She is an old friend, this one, with scars on her flanks that tell stories of sandstorms survived and predators faced. Her eyes hold the wisdom of countless crossings, and when she looks at me, I see recognition there. She knows what lies ahead. The bond between a caravan leader and his lead camel is sacred among our people. Without trust, the desert becomes a tomb. With it, even the harshest journey becomes possible. The other merchants in our caravan represent the diversity of Saharan trade. There is Hassan, a cloth merchant from Morocco, whose camels carry bolts of indigo fabric that will be worth fortunes in the markets of Gao. His weathered face speaks of many crossings, and his prayers are always the loudest at sunset. Beside him, young Malik tends to his precious cargo of dates and dried fruits, essential supplies that could mean the difference between life and death if we encounter delays. This is only his second crossing, and I see in his eyes the mixture of excitement and fear that every desert traveler knows. The stars above us are not mere decorations but our compass and calendar. My grandfather taught me to read their positions like pages in a book. The constellation we call the Camel's Neck points toward our destination, while the Hunter's Belt tells us the season is right for travel. The old knowledge runs deeper than written words, passed down through generations of desert people who understood that survival depends on reading the subtle signs that the sand sea provides. As the first hint of dawn touches the eastern horizon, I give the signal to begin. The bells on the camels' necks begin their ancient song, a rhythm that will accompany us for the next 40 days. Each bell has its own tone, and together they create a symphony that has echoed across these sands for centuries. The sound carries far in the desert air, announcing to any who might be listening that a caravan is moving, that trade continues, that life persists in this seemingly lifeless expanse. The loading process is an art form in itself. Every kilogram matters. Every rope knot could mean the difference between success and disaster. The salt blocks are wrapped in leather and secured with ropes that have been tested and retested. Water containers are positioned for easy access, and the precious supplies of dried meat and grain are distributed among the animals to prevent total loss if one camel should fall. Omar, our water master, checks each goatskin container with the reverence of a priest handling holy relics. Water is life in the desert, and its careful rationing will determine whether we reach our destination. He has calculated our needs down to the last drop, accounting for the expected heat, the length of our journey, and the known locations of wells along our route. His knowledge of water sources is legendary among the desert peoples. Men have died for less information than Omar carries in his head. The first rays of sunlight paint the dunes in shades of gold and amber. This is the hour of departure, when the desert is coolest and the camels are fresh. The temperature will rise quickly once the sun climbs higher, and we must cover as much ground as possible before the heat becomes unbearable. The desert is beautiful in these early hours, deceptively peaceful and welcoming. But I know its true nature. Beauty and death walk hand in hand in the Sahara. Our route will take us first south and then east, following ancient paths that have been worn smooth by countless caravans over the centuries. We will pass through the territory of various tribes, some friendly, others less so. The desert has its own politics, its own rules of passage and tribute. A successful caravan master must be part navigator, part diplomat, part warrior. The salt we carry is valuable, but it also makes us a target. The first day's march is always the hardest psychologically. Behind us lies the familiar, the known, the safe. Ahead stretches the unknown, the dangerous, the potentially fatal. But it is also filled with possibility. In the markets of Timbuktu, our salt will be exchanged for gold, ivory, and slaves. The profits from a successful journey can support a family for years. The risks are enormous, but so are the rewards. As we begin our descent into the first valley, the sun climbs higher and the heat begins to build. The camels find their rhythm, their padded feet making soft sounds against the sand. Behind us, our starting point disappears into the heat haze. There is no turning back now. We are committed to the crossing, to the ancient dance of trade that has connected the Mediterranean world with the kingdoms of West Africa for centuries. The silence of the desert is not empty but full. It contains the whisper of wind across sand, the soft breathing of camels, the creak of leather and rope. It holds the prayers of travelers, the songs of merchants, the dreams of men who risk everything for the promise of profit. This silence is sacred to us, a reminder that in the face of such vastness, human concerns become both insignificant and intensely important. By midday, we will have covered 20 kilometers. The heat will be intense, and we will seek shelter in whatever shade we can find. The camels will rest, and we will doze fitfully, conserving our strength for the evening march. This is the rhythm of desert travel, dictated not by human desires but by the sun's position and the availability of water. The first day ends as it began, with the ritual of making camp. We form a circle with our camels, their bodies providing a windbreak against the cooling desert air. The fires are lit, tea is prepared, and the evening prayers are said. The stars emerge one by one, brilliant in the clear desert sky. I lie on my blanket, listening to the sounds of the caravan settling for the night. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new wonders, new steps along the ancient path that connects the salt mines of the north with the gold markets of the south. But tonight, we rest, and I continue my story of the silent trade, the exchange that speaks no words but changes everything it touches. The desert dreams around us, and we dream with it, merchants and camels together under the vast African sky. The second day brings with it the reality of the desert's embrace. We rise before dawn, as is our custom, but the air carries a different quality now. The familiar sense of home have been replaced by the clean, harsh smell of deep sand and distant horizons. The camels are restless, their instincts telling them that we have crossed into the domain of the sun and wind. Aziza nuzzles my shoulder as I prepare her load, her warm breath a comfort in the cool morning air. The dunes have grown taller overnight, or perhaps it is merely that we have ventured deeper into their realm. Each ridge of sand tells a story written by the wind, sculpted into flowing curves that would make artists weep with envy. But beauty in the desert is often a mask for danger, and I read these formations with the eye of a navigator, not a poet. The way the sand has drifted tells me that the winds have been strong from the northeast, which means we may face headwinds today. Omar approaches with his daily water report, delivered in the low, measured tones that have become as familiar as breathing. Each person's ration is carefully calculated: 3 cups at dawn, 2 at midday, 3 at sunset. The camels receive their share according to their size and the weight they carry. This arithmetic of survival governs every aspect of our journey. Too generous and we die of thirst 5 days hence. Too miserly and we weaken, becoming prey to the desert's many dangers. The third day brings our first real test. Hassan's youngest camel, a 3-year-old named Farid, begins to limp. The animal's right front foot has developed a stone bruise, a common but potentially serious condition. In the settled world, such an injury would mean rest and treatment. Here, it means difficult decisions. We halt the caravan while Hassan examines the animal, his practiced hands feeling for heat and swelling. The diagnosis is not good. The camel can continue but slowly and with increasing pain. The debate that follows is conducted in the quiet, respectful tones that serious matters demand. Some argue for leaving the animal behind, redistributing its load among the other camels. Others advocate for slowing our pace to accommodate the injured beast. I listen to all voices, weighing options against the harsh mathematics of desert survival. Time is our enemy as much as thirst or sandstorms. Every day we spend in the deep desert is a day closer to exhaustion of our supplies. The decision, when it comes, is made with heavy hearts. Farid's load is distributed among the stronger animals, and the injured camel is given a lighter burden of personal belongings and emergency supplies. We will monitor his condition carefully, but we cannot jeopardize the entire caravan for one animal. This is the desert's cruel logic, and we who live by its rules understand the necessity even as we mourn the potential loss. On the fourth day, the wind changes. What begins as a gentle breeze from the south quickly intensifies, carrying with it the ominous yellow haze that desert travelers fear above all else. Sandstorm. The word passes through our caravan like a prayer, whispered from mouth to mouth as we watch the wall of sand approaching on the horizon. It moves with the inexorable power of a mountain walking, swallowing the landscape as it advances. The preparations are swift and practiced. The camels are made to kneel in a tight circle, their bodies forming a barrier against the wind. We cover their heads with cloth to protect their eyes and nostrils. Our own preparations are equally urgent. Face coverings are secured, water containers are sealed, and the precious salt is double-wrapped in leather. The storm will strip paint from rock and flay skin from bone if we are not careful. The storm strikes with the fury of a jinn awakened from ancient slumber. The wind howls like a living thing, driving sand particles with the force of tiny bullets. Visibility drops to mere meters, and the familiar landscape disappears into a uniform brown chaos. We huddle against our camels, sharing their warmth and drawing comfort from their calm presence. These animals have weathered such storms before, and their steady breathing helps to calm our racing hearts. For 6 hours we exist in this brown twilight, neither fully day nor night. The storm seems to last forever, but eventually, the wind begins to subside. The wall of sand moves on, revealing a transformed landscape. Dunes that were on our left are now on our right. Landmarks we had carefully noted have been erased or altered beyond recognition. The desert has reshuffled itself like a deck of cards, and we must find our way anew. This is where the true skill of the desert navigator becomes apparent. While others clean sand from their eyes and equipment, I study the sun's position, the wind's direction, the subtle clues that the desert provides to those who know how to read them. The storm has cost us half a day and carried us several kilometers off our intended path, but we are alive and our cargo is intact. In the desert, this counts as victory. The fifth day brings us to our first oasis, a small cluster of date palms surrounding a brackish well. The sight of green growing things after days of endless sand is almost overwhelming. Even the camels quicken their pace, their animal instincts recognizing the promise of water and shade. This oasis is called Bertamalat, the Well of Wishes, and it has been a stopping place for caravans for centuries. The well is ancient, its stone walls worn smooth by countless ropes and buckets. The water is not sweet, but it is clean and abundant. We refill our containers with the reverence of pilgrims touching a sacred shrine. The date palms provide blessed shade, and their fruit supplements are dried provisions. For the first time in days, we can rest without the pressure of the pitiless sun beating down upon us. It is here that we encounter other travelers, a small caravan of Hausa merchants traveling north with ivory and kola nuts. The meeting is formal but friendly, conducted according to the ancient customs of desert hospitality. Information is exchanged along with gifts. They report that the wells to the south are running low due to the dry season, but the trade routes remain open. Raiders have been sighted near the Azawad Basin, but the Mali Empire's patrols are active. The leader of the Hausa caravan is an elderly man named Musa, whose eyes hold the wisdom of many crossings. He speaks of the changing nature of the trade, how the coastal Europeans are beginning to reach inland with their ships and strange goods. Gold is still valuable, but the old certainties are shifting. New powers are rising in the south, and the ancient kingdoms face challenges from unexpected directions. We spend 2 days at Bur Tamilat, resting the animals and ourselves. The camels graze on the sparse vegetation, their bodies slowly recovering from the ordeal of the storm. We repair equipment, mend ropes, and tend to minor injuries. Young Malik suffers from sand blindness, a painful condition that requires careful treatment with cool water and rest in the shade. Hassan's injured camel, Farid, shows signs of improvement, though he will need continued care. The oasis nights are magical, filled with the sound of date fronds rustling in the wind and the distant call of night birds. The stars seem closer here, perhaps because the contrast with the green sanctuary below makes the vast sky above more intimate. We share stories and songs, maintaining the oral traditions that bind our people together across the vast emptiness of the desert. On the 7th day, we leave the oasis behind and venture once more into the open desert. The landscape begins to change subtly. The dunes are lower here, interspersed with areas of hard-packed sand and scattered rocks. We are entering the region known as the Azawad, a transition zone between the deep desert and the Sahel grasslands to the south. The change is welcome, but it brings new challenges. The 8th day brings our encounter with the desert's most dangerous inhabitants, raiders. They appear on the horizon like mirages, shimmering in the heat haze until they resolve into the shapes of armed men on camels. There are perhaps 20 of them, armed with swords and spears, their faces covered against the sand and recognition. They move with the fluid grace of men born to the desert, closing the distance between us with practiced efficiency. The negotiation that follows is a deadly dance of words and gestures. The raiders' leader, a tall man with eyes like chips of obsidian, demands tribute. His price is reasonable by desert standards: 1 camel and its load in exchange for safe passage. The alternative is battle, which would likely result in losses on both sides and the possible destruction of our entire caravan. This is the tax that the desert imposes on trade, collected by those who survive on the margins of civilization. I study the raiders while the formal negotiations proceed. They are lean and hard, men shaped by the harsh environment they inhabit. Their camels are swift racing animals, bred for speed rather than endurance. They carry minimal supplies, living off what they can take from travelers and the occasional gazelle or ostrich. It is a precarious existence, but it is the only life they know. The tribute is paid with the ceremonial gravity that such transactions require. We select one of Hassan's cloth camels, an older animal carrying a moderate load of indigo fabric. The transfer is conducted with mutual respect, for both sides understand that today's raider may be tomorrow's trading partner. The desert economy operates on relationships as much as goods, and burning bridges serves no one's interests. With the raider's blessing, we continue our journey. The encounter has cost us valuable cargo, but it has also provided us with information. The routes ahead are clear, the seasonal rains have been adequate, and the political situation in the trading cities remains stable. This intelligence is worth its weight in salt, for it allows us to adjust our plans and expectations accordingly. The 9th day brings us to the ruins of an ancient city, long abandoned but still impressive in its decay. The crumbling walls and empty buildings speak of a time when this route was busier, when permanent settlements could thrive in what is now empty desert. Climate change and shifting trade patterns have consigned this place to history, but it serves as a reminder of the transient nature of human ambition in the face of the desert's eternal patience. We make camp in the shelter of the ancient walls, grateful for the protection they provide against the night wind. The stones still radiate heat absorbed during the day, creating a warm microclimate that our camels appreciate. As I settle into my blankets, I reflect on the journey so far. We have faced storms and raiders, injury and exhaustion, But we have also witnessed the desert's terrible beauty and experienced the deep satisfaction of successful navigation through its challenges. The 10th day dawns clear and hot, promising another test of our endurance. Ahead lies the next major landmark on our route, the great oasis of Erewhon, where we will rest and resupply before the final push toward the trading cities of the south. The desert stretches before us, vast and challenging, but no longer quite so alien. We have begun to find our rhythm, to move in harmony with the sand and sun and wind that define this harsh but magnificent landscape. The great oasis of Erewhon appears on the horizon like a green jewel set in golden sand. After 12 days of desert crossing, the sight of date palms and the promise of sweet water brings tears to even the most hardened desert veterans' eyes. The camels sense it too, their pace quickening despite their exhaustion. Aziz's ears perk forward, and she releases a low rumbling call that speaks of relief and anticipation. We have reached the halfway point of our journey, the place where the deep desert gives way to the approaches of the trading lands. Erewhon is more than an oasis. It is a crossroads of cultures and commerce. As we approach, I can see the smoke from cooking fires rising in the still air, and the sounds of human activity reach our ears like music after the profound silence of the deep desert. Children run out to greet us, their laughter bright against the ancient backdrop of palms and permanent mud brick buildings. This is where the nomadic world of the desert meets the settled world of agriculture and trade. The oasis master, a dignified man named Abd al-Rahman, greets us with the traditional formalities. His family has managed this stopping place for 7 generations, and he knows every regular trader on the trans-Saharan routes. He inquires about our journey, our health, our cargo, and our intentions. This is not mere courtesy but practical intelligence gathering. The success of an oasis depends on understanding the flow of trade and the needs of travelers. We pay the customary fees for water, pasture, and protection. The rates are fair and have remained stable for decades, testimony to the careful balance that oasis communities maintain between profit and service. Our camels are led to designated grazing areas where they can feed on date palm fronds and the sparse but nutritious grass that grows in the shade. The luxury of abundant water allows us to thoroughly clean both ourselves and our equipment for the first time in nearly 2 weeks. The 3 days we spend in Erewhon are a gift of civilization in the midst of wilderness. The permanent buildings provide blessed relief from the constant wind and sand. The well water is sweet and clean, a stark contrast to the brackish liquid we have been rationing so carefully. The date harvest is in season, and we feast on fresh fruit that tastes like concentrated sunshine. Our bodies begin to recover from the accumulated stress of the desert crossing. It is in Erewhon that we receive crucial intelligence about the markets ahead. A caravan from Timbuktu arrived yesterday, bringing news of gold prices and political conditions in the trading cities. The information is both encouraging and concerning. Gold remains in high demand, but the seasonal rains have been irregular, affecting the river transport that brings gold from the mining regions. Prices are higher than usual, which benefits us as salt traders, but the reduced supply means that negotiating will be more challenging. The leader of the Timbuktu caravan is a merchant named Ibrahim, a man whose reputation for honesty and fair dealing precedes him throughout the region. He carries letters from our regular trading partners in the south, messages that provide detailed information about current market conditions and political developments. The Mali Empire remains stable, but there are rumors of Portuguese ships appearing more frequently along the coast, changing the dynamics of trade in ways that the interior merchants are only beginning to understand. Ibrahim speaks of the changing nature of the gold trade. The traditional mining regions are producing less, while new sources are being discovered further south. The great trading families of Timbuktu are adapting to these changes, but the process is creating both opportunities and uncertainties. For salt traders like ourselves, this means that flexibility and good information are more valuable than ever. As we prepare to leave Erewhon, I notice changes in the landscape that signal our approach to the settled regions. The sand gives way increasingly to hard-packed earth and scattered vegetation. Acacia trees appear with greater frequency, their thorny branches providing shade and their seed pods offering fodder for our camels. The air carries different scents now. The green smell of growing things, the smoke of wood fires, and the indefinable aroma of human habitation. The 15th day brings us to the first permanent settlements, small villages clustered around wells and seasonal streams. The inhabitants are primarily Sonic and Bambara people, farmers and herders who exist on the margins of the desert. They greet us with cautious friendliness, offering to trade fresh vegetables and grain for salt and small manufactured goods. These exchanges are conducted with the patient courtesy that characterizes all business in this region. The children of these villages regard us with wide-eyed wonder. To them, we are exotic figures from the mysterious northern desert, carriers of precious salt and tales of distant places. We represent connection to the wider world, proof that their small communities are part of a vast network of trade and communication. For us, they represent the first taste of the settled world we are approaching, a reminder that the desert is not the only reality. As we move south, the settlements become larger and more prosperous. The architecture changes from simple mud brick structures to more elaborate buildings with decorated doorways and carved wooden shutters. The markets grow more diverse, offering goods from across West Africa. Cola nuts from the forest regions, copper from the mines of the Air Mountains, cotton cloth woven in the cities of the house estates. We are entering the economic heartland of the Western Sudan. The 18th day brings us to the town of Walata, an important trading center that serves as the northern gateway to the Mali Empire. The settlement is built around a series of wells that never run dry, even in the driest years. The permanent population is perhaps 5,000 souls, but during the trading season, it swells to twice that number as caravans converge from all directions. The air buzzes with commerce and the multilingual chatter of traders from across the Sahara and Sudan. Walata is where we first encounter the formal trading protocols of the Mali Empire. Imperial officials inspect our caravan, count our animals, and assess our cargo. The process is conducted with bureaucratic thoroughness, but also with the courtesy due to legitimate merchants. We pay customs duties based on the value of our goods and receive in return official documentation that will smooth our passage through the empire's territories. The town's architecture reflects its role as a cultural crossroads. Islamic influence is evident in the mosque and the houses of wealthy merchants, with their distinctive Sudano-Sahelian style of mud brick construction and wooden support beams. But traditional African elements persist in the decoration and layout of buildings, creating a unique aesthetic that speaks to the successful synthesis of different cultural traditions. It is in Walata that we first practice the ancient art of silent trade, though not in its purest form. The concept is simple but profound. Commerce conducted without words, based on mutual understanding and traditional practices that have evolved over centuries. The silence is not complete, but it is ceremonial, a way of showing respect for the gravity of the exchange and the trust that makes it possible. The process begins with the ritual display of our salt. We arrange the blocks in neat rows in the designated trading area, each pile containing exactly 10 blocks of standard size. The local merchants examine our goods in silence, testing the quality with practiced hands and eyes. They look for the crystal clarity that indicates proper processing, the absence of impurities that would reduce value, and the correct weight that ensures fair dealing. The gold merchants appear at midday, when the sun is highest and the light is best for evaluating precious metals. They move with the deliberate grace of men who handle immense wealth as part of their daily routine. Their leader, a man named Mahmoud whose family has been trading gold for 6 generations, approaches our salt display with the measured steps of a priest approaching an altar. The examination of our salt is conducted with religious precision. Each block is weighed, tested for purity, and assessed for quality. The gold merchants confer among themselves in whispers, their voices so low that even we, standing nearby, cannot hear their words. This is not rudeness but tradition, a recognition that the value of goods is determined by careful consideration, not hasty judgment. When the assessment is complete, Mahmoud places a small leather pouch beside each pile of salt. The pouches contain gold dust, measured with precision scales that have been calibrated against standardized weights. The amount offered reflects not just the current market value of salt, but also the reputation of our caravan, the quality of our goods, and the long-term relationships that bind the trading community together. The moment of decision arrives with the weight of ceremony. We have the right to accept or reject the offer, but rejection carries risks. It suggests that we question the fairness of the established merchants, potentially damaging relationships that have been built over generations. At the same time, accepting an unfair offer would establish a precedent that could affect future trades. I study the gold pouches with the concentration of a scholar reading an ancient text. The amount appears fair, perhaps even generous by current market standards. The gold is pure, its color and weight confirming its quality. The quantity reflects the true value of our salt, adjusted for the current supply and demand conditions. After a moment of contemplation, I nod acceptance. The transfer is completed in continued silence. Our salt is loaded onto the gold merchant's camels, while we carefully store the precious pouches in specially designed containers that protect against theft and spillage. The entire transaction has been conducted with perhaps 50 words spoken, yet it represents the culmination of months of preparation and weeks of dangerous travel. The silent trade serves multiple purposes beyond mere commerce. It reduces the potential for misunderstanding that could lead to conflict. It demonstrates mutual respect between parties who may speak different languages and follow different customs. Most importantly, it creates a sense of ritual and ceremony that elevates the exchange above mere material transaction to something approaching sacred commerce. The gold we have received will be carefully divided among the caravan members according to predetermined agreements. As the caravan leader, I receive the largest share, but even the youngest apprentice will return home with enough gold to support his family for several months. This is the mathematics of successful desert trade. High risks balanced by high rewards, shared hardships leading to shared prosperity. The afternoon brings us to the edges of Timbuktu, the legendary city that has drawn traders from across the known world for centuries. The sight of its mud brick walls and towering mosques creates a sense of achievement that no amount of gold can equal. We have crossed the Great Desert, survived its dangers, and reached the heart of the Trans-Saharan trade network. The journey is far from over, but this moment represents the successful completion of its most challenging phase. As we make camp outside the city walls, I reflect on the ancient dance we have just performed. The silent trade is more than a commercial practice. It is a form of communication that transcends language and culture. In a world where different peoples speak different tongues and follow different customs, silence becomes a universal language of trust and mutual respect. The gold in our pouches represents not just wealth, but the successful negotiation of differences through patience, understanding, and the shared recognition that some things are more valuable than words. The evening call to prayer echoes across the city, and faithful Muslims among our number turn toward Mecca to offer their devotions. The sound is both familiar and exotic, a reminder that we have entered a world where Islamic civilization and African tradition have created something new and remarkable. Tomorrow we will enter the great markets of Timbuktu, where the final phase of our trading journey will begin. The morning sun casts long shadows across the walls of Timbuktu as we prepare to enter the city proper. The ancient gates, worn smooth by centuries of merchants and pilgrims, stand open like welcoming arms. Beyond them lies a world that exists at the intersection of three great civilizations: the Arab merchants of the north, the African kingdoms of the Sudan, and the emerging influence of lands across the sea. This is where cultures meet, merge, and create something entirely new. Our entry into Timbuktu follows protocols established over centuries of trade. The city guards, resplendent in their blue robes and carrying ceremonial spears, conduct a formal inspection of our caravan. They are not merely checking for contraband, but performing a ritual welcome that acknowledges our successful completion of the desert crossing. The lead guard, a tall Songhai man named Askia, speaks Arabic with the fluid accent of the region and welcomes us in the name of the Mali Empire. The streets of Timbuktu are a revelation after weeks in the desert. Buildings rise 2 and 3 stories high, their mud brick walls decorated with intricate geometric patterns that speak of Islamic architectural influence adapted to local materials and climate. The narrow streets provide blessed shade from the sun, and the sound of running water from hidden fountains creates a constant, soothing background murmur. This is a city built for commerce, but also for learning and contemplation. We are assigned quarters in the merchants' district, a complex of buildings surrounding a central courtyard where caravans can safely store their goods and rest their animals. The courtyard rings with the sounds of a dozen languages as traders from across the known world conduct their business. I hear Arabic, Songhai, Hausa, Fulani, and languages I cannot identify, creating a linguistic tapestry that reflects the cosmopolitan nature of this remarkable city. Our landlord is a merchant named Al-Hajj Mahmoud, a man whose family has been hosting desert traders for 5 generations. His house is a masterpiece of Sudano-Sahelian architecture, with thick walls that keep the interior cool and a roof garden where date palms provide shade and fresh fruit. He greets us with the elaborate courtesy that marks the true desert aristocracy, inquiring about our journey, our health, and our families with genuine interest. The cultural exchange begins immediately. Al-Hajj Mahmoud's youngest son, Ahmad, is perhaps 16 years old and burning with curiosity about the desert routes. He speaks Arabic with the pure accent of the religious schools, but his eyes hold the wanderlust that draws young men to the trading life. He asks endless questions about the desert, about the peoples we have encountered, about the techniques of navigation and survival that we have mastered. In return, Ahmad shares the knowledge of the settled world that we desert nomads often lack. He speaks of the great libraries of Timbuktu, where scholars from across the Islamic world come to study and teach. He describes the complex politics of the Mali Empire, the delicate balance between imperial authority and local autonomy that keeps this vast realm functioning. His knowledge is theoretical where ours is practical, but both types of understanding are necessary for successful trade. The evening meal is a feast of cultural fusion. We dine on dishes that combine Saharan nomadic traditions with the agricultural abundance of the Sudan. Roasted lamb seasoned with desert herbs is served alongside millet couscous flavored with baobab leaves. Fresh fish from the Niger River, grilled over aromatic wood, provides a taste of the riverine world that is foreign to us desert dwellers. The meal is accompanied by sweet tea prepared in the Tuareg style, a reminder of home in this strange and wonderful place. The conversation flows as freely as the tea. Al-Hajj Mahmoud speaks of the changing nature of trade, the new routes being established to the east and south as political conditions shift. He mentions the growing influence of the Portuguese traders on the coast, men who arrive by ship rather than camel and who offer different goods and different challenges. The ancient certainties of the trans-Saharan trade are evolving, and merchants must adapt or perish. Omar, our water master, finds himself in deep conversation with Ahmad about the technical aspects of desert survival. The young man's theoretical knowledge of geography and astronomy complements Omar's practical experience, creating a dialogue that enriches both participants. They discuss the use of stars for navigation, the reading of weather signs, and the location of wells that exist more in oral tradition than in any written map. The second day in Timbuktu brings us to the Great Market, the beating heart of the city's commercial life. The marketplace is a maze of stalls and shops, each specializing in goods from different regions of the known world. Here, salt from our own mines sits beside gold from the bambuk fields, ivory from the southern forests, and copper from the Air Mountains. The air is thick with the scent of spices, the sound of bargaining, and the energy of commerce at its most intense. We are introduced to the market's informal hierarchy, the network of relationships that governs trade in this complex environment. The most successful merchants are those who understand not just the value of goods, but the web of personal connections that make business possible. Trust, reputation, and family relationships are as important as supply and demand in determining who prospers and who fails. The Gold Merchants' Quarter is a world unto itself, where men handle unimaginable wealth with the casual expertise of craftsmen. The scales they use are works of art, precision instruments passed down through generations and calibrated against standard weights that have remained unchanged for centuries. The gold itself comes in many forms: dust from the river workings, nuggets from the mining regions, and worked ornaments that represent both raw material and skilled craftsmanship. It is here that we witness the most refined form of the silent trade. The gold merchants conduct their most sensitive negotiations in a courtyard set apart from the main market, where the only sounds are the whisper of wind through date palms and the soft clink of gold against brass scales. Words are unnecessary when men understand each other's intentions and the value of what they exchange. The silence is not empty but full of meaning, pregnant with the weight of centuries of tradition. The mystery of the gold sources is one of the trade's most closely guarded secrets. The merchants speak in euphemisms and metaphors, referring to the land where the river bends or the place where the sun sets on water. These cryptic references protect not just commercial advantages but entire communities whose prosperity depends on maintaining the secrecy of their wealth. The gold comes from regions so remote that they exist more in legend than in geography, places where men dive beneath rivers and emerge with handfuls of precious metal. The scholarly community of Timbuktu offers a different kind of cultural exchange. The city's libraries contain hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, works of Islamic theology, philosophy, law, and science copied by local scribes or brought by traders from across the Muslim world. These books represent knowledge accumulated over centuries, preserved in the dry climate and careful custody of the desert city. Scholars come from Egypt, Morocco, and even distant Baghdad to study and teach in Timbuktu schools. I find myself drawn to these centers of learning, fascinated by the way knowledge travels along the same routes as goods. The scholars speak of distant lands and ancient civilizations with the same precision that merchants use to describe market conditions. They map the world with words and ideas, creating intellectual connections that parallel the commercial networks that brought us here. The mystery of the ancient routes runs deeper than mere geography. The desert paths we follow were not created by human planning but evolved over millennia, shaped by the movement of animals, the location of water sources, and the shifting patterns of wind and sand. Each route has its own character, its own challenges, its own legends. Some paths are said to be haunted by the spirits of travelers who died attempting the crossing. Others are blessed by the presence of saints and holy men who prayed for the safety of caravans. The relationship between desert nomads and settled peoples is complex and ever-changing. We who live in the desert often view the city dwellers as soft and dependent, unable to survive without walls and permanent water sources. They, in turn, see us as crude and primitive, lacking the refinements of civilization. Yet our mutual dependence is absolute. The cities need our salt, our livestock, our knowledge of distant places. We need their manufactured goods, their agricultural surplus, their services as intermediaries in the complex world of international trade. The religious dimension of this cultural exchange is profound. Islam provides a common language that spans ethnic and linguistic boundaries, but it has been adapted to local conditions and traditions in fascinating ways. The mosque architecture of Timbuktu incorporates African building techniques and aesthetics. The religious festivals blend Islamic observances with pre-Islamic celebrations of seasonal changes and agricultural cycles. The scholarly traditions combine Arab learning with African oral tradition, creating new forms of knowledge and understanding. The women of Timbuktu move through the markets with a freedom that surprises us desert dwellers. They conduct business, own property, and participate in the intellectual life of the city in ways that would be impossible in many other Islamic societies. This reflects the influence of local African traditions on Islamic practice, creating a synthesis that is uniquely Sudanese. The city's prosperity depends partly on this liberation of human potential, allowing all members of society to contribute their talents to the common good. The craft traditions of Timbuktu represent another form of cultural fusion. The metalworkers combine techniques learned from Arab craftsmen with local materials and aesthetic preferences. The result is jewelry and decorative objects that are recognizably African but executed with the precision and sophistication of the best Islamic craftsmanship. These objects travel along trade routes, carrying cultural messages as well as commercial value. The mystery of the Niger River adds another dimension to our understanding of this region. The river's course was unknown to Arab geographers, who imagined it flowing in impossible directions or connecting to distant seas. The local peoples guard their knowledge of the river's true nature, understanding that geographical ignorance among outsiders provides them with strategic advantages. The river is both highway and barrier, source of life and boundary between worlds. As we prepare to leave Timbuktu, I reflect on the complex web of relationships that makes the city possible. The desert nomads who bring salt and dates, the river peoples who provide fish and transport, the farmers who grow millet and sorghum, the craftsmen who create beautiful objects, the scholars who preserve knowledge, the merchants who facilitate exchange, all are necessary parts of a functioning whole. Remove any element, and the entire system would collapse. The farewell ceremonies are as elaborate as the welcome. Al-Hajj Mahmud presents us with gifts that represent both hospitality and investment in future relationships. A beautifully crafted dagger for me, fine cloth for Hassan, a prayer book for Omar. These gifts create obligations that will be remembered and reciprocated on future visits. The network of relationships that makes trade possible is maintained through such gestures, small acts of generosity that build trust across cultural boundaries. The young Ahmad begs to be allowed to accompany us on our return journey, eager to experience the desert life he has heard so much about. His father refuses, but gently, explaining that the boy must first complete his education and learn to handle the family's business in the city. Perhaps in a few years, when he has proven himself capable, he will be allowed to join a caravan and experience the desert's harsh beauty for himself. As we load our camels with the goods we have acquired: gold, ivory, manufactured items, and precious manuscripts, I am struck by the way material objects carry cultural meaning. Each item represents not just commercial value but the story of its creation, the journey it has taken, and the relationships it has helped to forge. We are not merely transporting goods but serving as carriers of culture, agents of connection between distant peoples and places. The departure from Timbuktu is tinged with sadness and anticipation. We leave behind the comfort and security of the city, but we carry with us new knowledge, new relationships, and new understanding of the world's complexity. The desert awaits, challenging and unforgiving, but also familiar and welcoming in its own harsh way. We have been changed by our stay in the city, just as the city has been subtly changed by our presence. This is how culture travels, not through conquest or coercion, but through the patient accumulation of small exchanges and mutual understanding. The return journey begins with the weight of gold and the lightness of spirits. Our camels, now carrying precious metals instead of salt, move with a different rhythm. The gold is heavier but more compact, changing the balance of our loads and the way the animals carry themselves. Aziza seems to understand the value of her burden, stepping with extra care as we leave the familiar walls of Timbuktu behind. The morning sun catches the dust raised by our departure, creating a golden haze that seems to bless our homeward journey. The first days of the return passage offer time for reflection that was impossible during our urgent push southward. The immediate pressures of reaching our destination have been replaced by the quieter challenge of bringing our precious cargo safely home. This shift in urgency allows the mind to wander, to process the experiences we have accumulated, and to begin the internal journey that every successful trader must undertake. As we retrace our steps through the settled regions, I find myself seeing the landscape with different eyes. The villages that seemed exotic and mysterious on our southward journey now feel familiar, part of a known world that connects the desert to the cities. The people we encounter greet us with the warmth reserved for successful traders, and their congratulations carry the weight of genuine appreciation for what we have accomplished. The spiritual dimension of our journey begins to manifest in unexpected ways. Omar, our practical water master, speaks increasingly of the desert's divine nature. He describes how the careful calculation of water rations has taught him to appreciate every drop, to see in the precious liquid a gift from Allah that must be received with gratitude and shared with wisdom. His prayers at sunset have taken on a new intensity, his words carrying the reverence of a man who has witnessed the miraculous nature of survival in the harshest environment on earth. Hassan, the cloth merchant, has been profoundly affected by his encounter with the scholars of Timbuktu. He speaks of the manuscripts he has seen, the knowledge they contain, and the way they connect our small corner of the world to the great centers of Islamic learning. His understanding of his own role in the trade network has expanded beyond mere commerce to include the transmission of ideas and the preservation of culture. He carries with him not just gold but copies of texts that will enrich the intellectual life of our home communities. Young Malik, making his second crossing, has been transformed by the experience in ways that go beyond the obvious gain in confidence and skill. The boy who left our homeland with wide eyes and nervous energy has become a man who moves with the measured pace of an experienced desert traveler. More importantly, he has begun to understand the spiritual dimensions of our work. He speaks of the desert as a teacher, harsh but fair, that reveals truths about human nature and divine providence that cannot be learned in any other way. The silence of the desert takes on new meaning on the return journey. Where once it seemed empty and forbidding, it now feels full of presence and possibility. The vast spaces that stretch in every direction no longer represent emptiness but potential, the blank canvas on which generations of traders have written their stories. Each dune, each rock formation, each stretch of hard-packed sand carries the memory of countless caravans that have passed this way before us. The nights are particularly profound, when the desert reveals its most sacred character. The stars that seemed like distant lights on our outward journey now feel like intimate companions, each constellation a chapter in the great book of navigation that connects Earth to heaven. I teach the younger members of our caravan to read the stellar map, not just as a practical skill, but as a form of worship, a way of connecting with the divine order that governs the universe. The encounter with the ancient ruins takes on deeper significance during our return passage. The crumbling walls and empty buildings that once spoke only of abandonment now seem to whisper of the eternal cycle of rise and fall that governs all human endeavor. The civilizations that built these structures were once as confident and prosperous as we are now, yet they have been reduced to dust and memory. This recognition brings not despair but a profound sense of humility and the understanding that our own achievements are part of a larger pattern that extends far beyond our individual lives. The second encounter with the oasis at Erawan provides an opportunity for deeper reflection on the relationship between the sacred and the practical. The green sanctuary that we approached with such relief on our southward journey now seems like a manifestation of divine mercy, a reminder that even in the harshest environments, life finds a way to flourish. The date palms that provide shade and sustenance, the sweet water that flows from ancient springs, the community that has maintained this refuge for centuries, all speak to the presence of the divine in the most practical aspects of human existence. The spiritual transformation is not limited to individual members of our caravan, but extends to our collective understanding of our role in the world. We have begun to see ourselves not merely as traders seeking profit, but as participants in a sacred process that connects distant peoples and cultures. The salt we carried south was not just a commodity but a necessity that preserved life and enabled civilization. The gold we carry north represents not just wealth but the fruits of human labor and the foundation of future prosperity. The challenges of the return journey test our spiritual as well as our physical endurance. A severe sandstorm that lasts for 2 days forces us to shelter in a small depression, huddled together with our camels while the wind howls overhead. In this enforced intimacy, barriers between us break down, and we share stories, fears, and hopes with an honesty that would be impossible under normal circumstances. The storm becomes a crucible that forges deeper bonds between us and strengthens our collective resolve. During the storm, old Ibrahim, our most experienced camel handler, tells us stories of the desert's spiritual guardians, the jinn and angels that watch over travelers who show proper respect for the sacred nature of the wilderness. His tales, passed down through generations of desert people, speak of a world where the material and spiritual realms intersect, where survival depends not just on practical skills, but on maintaining proper relationships with the unseen forces that govern the desert's moods and seasons. The return to the salt mines at Taghaza provides a profound contrast to our departure. The harsh working conditions that we had accepted as simply part of the economic reality now seem to carry deeper meaning. The men who labor in the underground chambers, extracting the white gold that makes our trade possible, are not just workers but partners in a sacred enterprise. Their willingness to endure hardship so that others might benefit speaks to the interconnectedness of all human endeavor and the way that individual sacrifice serves the greater good. The final stages of our journey home are marked by a growing sense of completion that goes beyond the successful completion of a trading expedition. We have not just crossed the desert twice and returned with valuable cargo, but we have undergone a transformation that touches the deepest levels of our being. The rhythm of walking, the discipline of water rationing, the constant awareness of danger and opportunity have stripped away the superficial concerns that occupy so much of settled life and revealed the essential truths that govern human existence. The landscape begins to change as we approach our homeland, the familiar contours of hills and valleys that speak of home and family. Yet we are not the same people who left these lands months ago. The desert has marked us, changed us, given us new eyes with which to see the world. The gold we carry is valuable, but the transformation we have undergone is priceless, a gift that will enrich not just our own lives, but the lives of all those we encounter. The spiritual aspects of our journey become most apparent as we near its end. The gratitude we feel for our safe return is not just relief, but a profound acknowledgement of the forces that have protected and guided us. The successful completion of such a dangerous undertaking could not have been achieved through human effort alone, but required the blessing of powers beyond our understanding. This recognition brings with it a sense of responsibility to use our good fortune wisely and to remember those who enabled our success. The reunion with our families is more than a personal celebration, but a community event that acknowledges the collective nature of our achievement. The entire community has a stake in our success. From the families who provided the initial investment to the craftsmen who built our equipment to the religious leaders who blessed our departure. Our return represents not just individual prosperity, but the successful functioning of the social and economic systems that make such expeditions possible. The distribution of our profits follows ancient customs that ensure the benefits of our success are shared throughout the community. The widows and orphans receive their traditional portions, the mosque receives its due, and the skilled craftsmen who made our journey possible are rewarded according to their contributions. This is not charity but justice, the recognition that individual success is impossible without communal support and that prosperity creates obligations as well as opportunities. As I sit in my own house, surrounded by the familiar objects and sounds of home, I reflect on the changes that the journey has wrought in my understanding of the world and my place in it. The desert that once seemed like an obstacle to be overcome now feels like a teacher that has revealed profound truths about the nature of existence. The hardships we endured were not just challenges to be survived, but opportunities for growth and transformation. The gold we brought back will eventually be spent or traded, but the lessons we learned will last a lifetime. The understanding of our own capabilities, the appreciation for the support of others, the recognition of the divine presence in the natural world. These are the true treasures that we have brought back from our journey across the great desert. They will influence every decision we make and every relationship we form for the rest of our lives. The younger members of our caravan, particularly Malik, have been most visibly transformed by the experience. The boy who left with us has returned as a man, not just in age but in wisdom and understanding. He speaks of the desert with the reverence that comes from having faced its challenges and emerged victorious. His plans for the future now include not just personal success but service to the community that made his transformation possible. The spiritual dimension of our journey continues to unfold in the days and weeks following our return. The dreams we experience are filled with images of endless sand and starlit skies, reminders of the sacred spaces we have traversed. The morning prayers carry new meaning, informed by the experience of witnessing sunrise over the dunes and feeling the presence of the divine in the vast emptiness of the desert. The routines of settled life, while welcome, seem somehow less real than the elemental challenges we faced in the wilderness. The stories we tell of our journey become part of the oral tradition that preserves the wisdom of the desert peoples. Each telling adds new details, new insights, new understanding of the spiritual dimensions of our experience. The children who listen to these stories with wide eyes today will carry them forward to future generations, ensuring that the lessons we learned are not lost but become part of the collective wisdom of our people. The transformation that we have undergone is not an ending but a beginning. The confidence we have gained, the relationships we have forged, the understanding we have achieved, all of these prepare us for greater challenges and greater opportunities. The desert has tested us and found us worthy, marking us as men who can be trusted with difficult tasks and important responsibilities. Our future journeys, whether across sand or through the complexities of settled life, will be informed by the wisdom we have gained and the spiritual growth we have experienced. The final approach to our homeland brings with it a mixture of emotions that no words can adequately capture. The familiar silhouette of our village appears on the horizon like a mirage made real, its mud brick walls and scattered date palms a sight more beautiful than any treasure we have brought back from the south. The camels sense home as surely as we do, their pace quickening despite the weight of gold and ivory they carry. Aziza lifts her head and releases a long, resonant call that echoes across the desert, a sound that will be answered by other camels in the village and heard by families who have been waiting for our return. The homecoming is not just a personal triumph, but a community celebration that validates the entire social structure that makes such expeditions possible. The children who run out to meet us are not just excited by our return, but by the proof we represent that the ancient ways still work, that courage and skill can still triumph over the desert's challenges. Their laughter and shouts of welcome create a symphony of joy that drowns out the constant whisper of wind that has been our companion for so many weeks. The formal reception follows protocols that have been observed for generations. The village elders, dressed in their finest robes, welcome us with the grave dignity that befits the successful completion of a sacred trust. Their words of congratulation are not mere courtesy but acknowledgement of the skill, courage, and divine blessing that have enabled our success. The ritual exchange of gifts that follows, dates and milk offered to the returning travelers, samples of our precious cargo presented to the community leaders, reinforces the bonds that unite us all in common purpose. The detailed accounting of our journey begins immediately, not from greed but from the practical necessity of ensuring that all obligations are met and all participants receive their just rewards. The profits from our expedition will be divided according to agreements made before our departure. But the process involves more than mere arithmetic. Each person's contribution must be evaluated, each risk acknowledged, each success celebrated. The gold we have brought back is not just wealth but the foundation of future expeditions, the seed from which new journeys will grow. The integration of our experience into the collective memory of the community begins with the formal recounting of our adventures. In the evening, when the heat of the day has passed and the desert air carries the scent of cooking fires and brewing tea, we gather in the central square to tell our story. The audience includes not just our families but the entire community, for our journey has been undertaken on behalf of all, and all have a right to hear of its outcome. The stories we tell are not mere entertainment but vital information that will guide future expeditions. The condition of wells, the behavior of tribes along the route, the state of markets in the trading cities, all of this intelligence is carefully noted and will be consulted when the next caravan is planned. But beyond the practical information, our tales carry deeper meanings, lessons about courage and perseverance, about the importance of trust and cooperation, about the divine providence that watches over those who venture into the desert's embrace. The transformation that we have undergone becomes apparent in the way we tell our stories. The man who speaks now is not the same person who left the village months ago. The desert has changed us, deepened us, given us new perspectives on the ancient truths that govern human existence. The challenges we faced were not just obstacles to overcome but opportunities for growth, chances to discover strengths we did not know we possessed, and to develop qualities of character that will serve us for the rest of our lives. The spiritual dimension of our journey becomes most apparent in the quiet hours after the celebration, when the immediate excitement of return has faded and we begin to process the full meaning of our experience. The desert has been more than a geographical challenge. It has been a teacher, a testing ground, a sacred space where the essential truths of existence are revealed with startling clarity. The silence we learned to appreciate, the patience we developed, the humility we acquired, these are not just survival skills but spiritual disciplines that will enrich every aspect of our lives. The legacy of our journey extends far beyond our individual transformation. The young men who listen to our stories with burning eyes will carry forward the traditions we represent, ensuring that the ancient knowledge does not die with us. The gold we have brought back will fund new expeditions, new adventures, new opportunities for the next generation to test themselves against the desert's challenges. The relationships we have forged with trading partners in distant cities will provide the foundation for future commerce, creating lasting bonds that transcend the boundaries of culture and geography. The philosophical implications of our experience reveal themselves gradually, like the slow dawning of desert sunrise. The journey across the Sahara has been more than a commercial expedition. It has been a pilgrimage, a quest for meaning that has taken us to the limits of human endurance and beyond. The desert has stripped away the superficial concerns that occupy so much of ordinary life, revealing the essential truths that govern all human existence. The importance of courage in the face of uncertainty, the necessity of cooperation in overcoming challenges, the presence of the divine in the most unlikely places. The relationship between risk and reward, so clearly demonstrated in our desert crossing, becomes a metaphor for all human endeavor. The salt we carried south was worthless in our homeland but precious in the trading cities. The gold we bring back is valuable here but was merely another commodity in the markets of Timbuktu. Value is not inherent in objects but created by human needs and desires, by the willingness to take risks and the skill to recognize opportunities. This understanding transforms our view of commerce from mere profit-seeking to a form of service that connects distant peoples and satisfies genuine human needs. The silence of the desert, which seemed so forbidding at first, has become a source of profound peace and insight. In a world filled with constant noise and distraction, the vast quiet of the Sahara offered a rare opportunity for deep reflection and spiritual growth. The absence of familiar sounds forced us to listen more carefully to the subtle voices of wind and sand, to the rhythm of our own breathing, to the whispered prayers of our companions. This enhanced awareness has become a permanent part of our character, a gift that will enrich every moment of our remaining lives. The memory of the stars that guided our journey across the trackless wastes becomes a symbol of the divine guidance that is always available to those who know how to look for it. The celestial navigation we learned was not just a practical skill but a form of worship, a way of connecting with the eternal order that governs the universe. The constellations that seemed so distant and impersonal at first became intimate friends, reliable companions whose presence offered comfort and direction in the darkest hours. The transformation of our understanding of time itself represents one of the most profound changes wrought by our desert experience. In the settled world, time is measured by clocks and calendars, divided into artificial units that bear little relationship to natural rhythms. In the desert, time is organic, flowing, connected to the movement of sun and stars, the needs of animals, the availability of water. This natural relationship with time has given us a different perspective on urgency and patience, on the importance of accepting the rhythms of life rather than trying to force them into artificial patterns. The lessons learned from our camels extend far beyond animal husbandry to encompass fundamental truths about the nature of partnership and mutual dependence. These magnificent creatures, so perfectly adapted to the harsh environment of the desert, taught us about endurance, patience, and the importance of conserving resources. Their ability to carry heavy loads across vast distances without complaint became a model for human behavior, a reminder that true strength lies not in dramatic gestures, but in steady, persistent effort. The encounters with other travelers along the route revealed the fundamental unity that underlies the apparent diversity of human culture. Despite differences in language, religion, and customs, we found that the essential human qualities of courage, generosity, and wisdom are universal. The traders we met, whether they were Arabs from the north or Africans from the south, shared the same basic values that make civilization possible. This recognition has profound implications for how we view strangers and foreigners, transforming suspicion into curiosity and fear into respect. The economic impact of our successful return ripples outward through the entire community, creating opportunities and obligations that will be felt for years to come. The gold we have brought back will fund new construction projects, support families in need, and provide the capital for future trading ventures. But the true wealth we have created lies not in precious metals, but in the skills, knowledge, and relationships that will enable our community to thrive in an uncertain world. The training of the next generation becomes our most important responsibility, for the traditions we represent are not self-perpetuating but must be consciously passed on to those who will follow in our footsteps. The young men who approach us with eager questions about the desert routes are not just seeking practical information but looking for models of how to live with courage and integrity. Our words and actions in the months and years ahead will shape their understanding of what it means to be a man, a trader, a member of the desert community. The preservation of the ancient knowledge becomes a sacred trust that extends beyond our individual lives to encompass the entire history of our people. The star maps we carry in our memories, the locations of wells and safe passages, the customs and protocols that govern trade relationships. All of this information represents centuries of accumulated wisdom that must not be lost. The stories we tell, the lessons we teach, the traditions we maintain are not mere nostalgia but living links to the past that enable the future. The philosophical synthesis that emerges from our desert experience transcends the boundaries of any single tradition or teaching. The Islamic faith that provides the framework for our daily prayers has been enriched by the animistic traditions of the desert peoples, the scholarly wisdom of the trading cities, and the practical mysticism that emerges from prolonged exposure to the natural world. This synthesis is not a compromise but a deepening, a recognition that truth can be found in many forms and that wisdom is not the monopoly of any single group or culture. The understanding of mortality that comes from facing real danger in the desert paradoxically enhances our appreciation of life. The constant awareness that death is only a sandstorm, a dried well, or a navigation error away makes every moment precious, every breath a gift to be treasured. This heightened awareness of life's fragility and beauty becomes a permanent part of our character, influencing every decision we make and every relationship we form. The return to ordinary life after such an extraordinary experience requires its own form of adaptation and integration. The routines of settled existence, while welcome after the constant vigilance required in the desert, seem somehow less real than the elemental challenges we faced in the wilderness. The task becomes one of maintaining the insights and qualities developed during our journey while adapting to the different requirements of life in the village. The legacy of our journey will be measured not just in the immediate profits we have generated, but in the long-term impact on our community's ability to maintain its traditions and adapt to changing circumstances. The success of our expedition demonstrates that the ancient ways still work, that courage and skill can still triumph over seemingly impossible challenges. This knowledge will inspire future generations to undertake their own journeys of discovery and transformation. As I sit in my courtyard in the evening, watching the stars emerge in the familiar pattern that guided us across the desert, I reflect on the profound changes that a single journey can bring to a human life. The man who sits here now is not the same person who left this place months ago. The desert has marked me, changed me, given me new eyes with which to see the world. The gold in my strongbox is valuable, but the transformation I have undergone is priceless. The whisper of wind through the date palms carries echoes of the greater wind that sculpts the dunes and drives the sandstorms. The silence of the desert night lives on in the quiet corners of my heart, a source of peace and strength that no external circumstances can disturb. The rhythm of walking, the discipline of water rationing, the constant awareness of danger and opportunity, all of these have become part of my essential nature, qualities that will influence every aspect of my remaining life. The salt we carried south has been transformed into gold, but we who carried it have been transformed into something more valuable still. Men who have tested themselves against the ultimate challenges and emerged victorious. The desert has revealed our true nature, stripped away the superficial concerns that occupy so much of ordinary life, and shown us the essential truths that govern human existence. We are no longer merely traders but pilgrims who have completed a sacred journey and returned with treasures that cannot be measured in ordinary terms. The story I have told you tonight is not unique but part of a vast tapestry of human experience that stretches back to the beginning of time and forward to the end of days. Every generation must face its own deserts, its own challenges, its own opportunities for transformation. The particular details change, the routes, the goods, the dangers, but the essential elements remain constant. The need for courage, the importance of trust, the presence of the divine in the most unlikely places. The silent trade that we practiced in the markets of the South was more than a commercial technique. It was a form of communication that transcended language and culture, a recognition that some truths are too profound for words. The gold we exchanged for salt was valuable, but the silence in which the exchange took place was sacred, a moment of perfect understanding between strangers who shared nothing but their common humanity. As the night deepens and the desert wind carries the scent of distant places, I close my eyes and listen to the eternal rhythm that connects all things. The heartbeat of the earth, the whisper of the stars, the breath of the divine. All are present in this moment. All are part of the vast symphony of existence that we glimpsed in the silence of the desert. The journey is ended, but the truth it revealed will continue forever, passed from hand to hand, from heart to heart, from generation to generation, like precious salt dissolved in the endless ocean of time. Salt was survival, gold was power, but silence was the language of the soul, the medium through which the deepest truths are communicated. In the vast emptiness of the desert, we discovered that emptiness itself is full, that silence speaks louder than words, that the journey inward is as important as the journey across the sand. We crossed the desert not just for riches, but for the rhythm of the wind, the whisper of the stars, the silence that contains all sounds. Some nights, when the wind is right, I still feel the sand in my breath, taste the salt on my lips, hear the bells of the caravan calling me back to the endless golden sea where men become more than they ever dreamed possible.